the Oral Report. A few days ago, I spoke to Barak from the Other Barak show and his guest, Yaacov Amar Rothstein. And we had a very frank discussion about an initiative I had been approached to discuss, and it comes from the Netherlands. And the request was, is there a way of brokering a peace between Israel and Gaza? Yaacov is boots on the ground in Gaza. He has IDF special forces. He is a man who wishes to see peace and conciliation between Israel and Gaza, but I'm afraid the overall outlook is not very good. Before I go on to the clip of what they had to say when I spoke to them about this initiative, I'd like you to take a look at this. So that is debris, the fallout of an explosion. I believe the Iron Dome intercepted a missile from Yemen. And it's apparently a hypersonic missile. This is a very serious escalation. The debris, as you can see, landed in Israel and caused considerable damage to property. That said, I don't think any human lives were lost. I was rather concerned that the missile had gotten into Israeli territory. As it transpires, it seems that the reason the Iron Dome and the arrow, whatever was used to intercept it, the reason they waited so long was because they did not want to implode it over Jordan and cause a possible fallout over there. But in light of this missile strike, and by the way, the same morning, there were major missile strikes and rocket fire from Hezbollah in the north. So this is Yemen coming from the south, and then we have Hezbollah attacking from the north. Let us go and take a look at what Yaacov and Barak had to say about a ceasefire.
I think the Noahide laws, like as a concept, as a system, could also contribute of how to implement this, make this kind of a synergy with Islam. I think there's solutions, but look, honestly, the Israeli public, I'm not sure if we're there. I think also the Gaza public is not real there. There is people in Gaza that they really want to make this moves towards peace with Israel, but those voices are usually just eclipsed. So I think Israel needs to pump those voices more.
So as we can see here, Yaacov has got he has spoken to people from Gaza. They do want peace. There are Gazans who want peace, but they cannot speak out. I believe someone was recently executed for apparently something that they'd written about Hamas and Gaza. It is impossible for Gazans to speak out because Hamas rules with an iron fist. Now, you can say that they all voted for Hamas, and that is true. But the other side of it, I have to say, I wonder how many people are the silent majority. So the voices that you hear, I suspect, are the voices who want to be heard, and I don't think everyone else is really in a position to talk. Let's see what they had to say about this.
Hi there, Yaacov. Lovely to see you on Barak's show. I want to ask you something very specific. In the past few days, I was approached by some Jewish people who live in the Netherlands, and they are trying to form a peace initiative between Israelis and Gazans. And I actually suggested, Barak's show as one of the mediums they could look at. But they were very there was an innate hostility that I didn't quite understand until I got that the main reason for their actions is they want a ceasefire immediately. And they believe that ceasefire is the only solution. And they are slightly embarrassed that Israel is continuing to defend itself, and as it affects them, and they think it is causing anti-Semitism in Europe. How would you respond as a Gazan to their desire to put pressure on the Dutch government to force Israel into a ceasefire?
Okay, I just want to be clear over here. Yaacov is not a Gazan. He is in Gaza, and he has spoken to Gazans. The question I'm asking him here is, if he were a Gazan and he was approached about a peace initiative, what would he think about it? Let's continue.
Look, this is one of the most debated topics now in Israel itself. Israeli society is like a big percentage of Israeli society is in the streets now protesting for this same topic. But the question is, what are the conditions for the ceasefire? Just to put everything in proportion, the attacks were the 7th of October. In the 6th of October, there was a ceasefire. I fought in 2014 in Protective Edge. You know how many ceasefires there were in Protective Edge? There were, if I'm not wrong, 14 ceasefires. I remember once we were with the commander of the platoon, I don't know, the Mempe, and he said, "Okay, guys, now we just Israel signed a ceasefire." So in that same second, we start getting attacks from mortars. That same second, okay. So that the question is, what are the conditions? If they give me my hostages, honestly, I don't know if there's much question. If Hamas surrenders, because they make ceasefire the 6th of October and the 7th of October. If not, they will do again and again and again and again, as the voice speaker, voice man of Hamas said. So you can ask this guy from Gaza, this Gaza friend. Depends of the conditions. All of us, I believe, every Israeli wants peace. I don't think it has to be a very crazy Israeli that they want war and destruction. I don't know. But the mainstream Israeli, we want peace. So if you give me peace, I will give you peace. But the problem is that Hamas doesn't want that. They don't.
Now, do you see the problem? Every Israeli wants peace. I really do believe that every Israeli wants peace. I have not yet come across an Israeli who thought this war was a fantastic idea and everybody should just carry on fighting. But what do they do? Because as he says, in Protective Edge, there were 14 ceasefires. There were ceasefires on the 6th of October. There were ceasefires on the 8th of October. And there were ceasefires on the 7th of October when Israel was being attacked. So now ask yourself, if you are in their position, do you really think a ceasefire is going to work? It's going to continue it over here.
They just want to destroy Israel. That's literally in their charter. That's in their ideology. So it really depends. You can ask your Gaza friend, thanks, like B'ezrat Hashem, God willing, that more voices will like peace, but you need to get rid of Hamas, I think, first, if you want a ceasefire.
I want to interject here because I've said stuff like this before, and I'm going to say it again because I've been historically correct every time I've said this. And I think that I will also be historically correct if I say it now again. If there is tomorrow a submission in the news that says Hamas agrees to a ceasefire to release the hostages and put their guns down, as long as the IDF fully displaces themselves from Gaza and Israel agrees, there will be an attempt during the process of the agreement to the actual mechanism of the Red Cross delivering hostages and the IDF displacing themselves, a mechanism done in order to create the illusion that Israel fired another airstrike, Israel killed another person, another woman, another kid, another child was killed, in order for that footage and propaganda to then be leveraged to the world, to be shown on BBC and Al Jazeera, that Israel broke the agreement and therefore the hostages won't come back and Hamas won't put their guns down. And the people that will believe that narrative are the majority of the people on earth, which means Israel has unfortunately, and I don't know on month 11, if I can say now, looking back, if there was a way to prevent this, has unfortunately been put in the position that no matter what they do or do not agree to, Hamas has the ability, due to the propaganda machine that they have built, to basically make it look like and create the illusion that everything that happens is Israel's fault. And that is so inevitable. We saw it with the Shifa hospital. We saw that after the New York Times said that Israel bombed the hospital, and then we published footage of a misfire rocket that landed on the hospital, it was, I don't know, a day
I
or two.
remember.
Yes, it wasn't even that long after they had to change the title of the article. But let me tell you that the damage was already done. It doesn't matter if the New York Times changed their
Of
title.
course.
The world already saw it, and therefore, what has everyone been saying since the 8th of October? Israel continues to fight and doesn't want a ceasefire. That is, it's the furthest thing from the truth. You're like I have Yaacov on, and I have all these people on because we have soldiers inside of Gaza who are literally telling us they don't want war. And I couldn't think of anyone else better to come onto a platform and tell the world that we
Exactly.
we don't want war. But I'm telling you right now, I find it so hard to believe that if miraculously tomorrow we woke up and saw that Hamas and Israel came to an agreement, and I hate to say this, that it would actually successfully happen. Because I just find that with all of the strings Sinwar and Hamas and Qatar have been able to pull, they would find a really, really, really good way to make it look like we fired an extra rocket or we killed an extra child and we broke the agreement, and therefore we're not handing the hostages over, and then the fighting continues, and then hostages will die. But a lot of people will think that the hostages dying is justifiable because Israel broke the ceasefire. It's literally a never-ending cycle. And this is why we are it's like I've been saying this for a long time. It is a lose-lose for Israel. A lose-lose in every fucking scenario possible. And people somehow are like unable to see that. We 6 hostages were executed a week and a half ago, and Israel is at fault. And we lost.
Yeah.
We lost. We lost 6 hostages. We lost the morale. We lost trust. We lost hope. And the people who did it have been able to continue to be freedom fighters. So what makes people think that they're not going to continue to execute hostages when they have every ample opportunity to do so as a result of propaganda? It is a beautiful, beautiful machine that they've built for themselves, and it's actually so vile and so lethal. It is the only thing that's holding them together at this point. Because, like Yaacov just said, from a military perspective, they're weak. They have less terrorists. They have less compounds. They have less equipment. But what they have is a beautiful, indestructible propaganda machine running through the world and through psychology that even if at their weakest points in time from a military strength standpoint, it doesn't matter because the psychology of people will always sway towards Hamas and what they are trying to achieve, regardless of how weak they are on the ground. It comes to show that if Yaacov and the rest of his unit and everyone else inside of Gaza tomorrow say to the world, Hamas doesn't have anyone standing left in the Gaza Strip. They're gone. No rockets can be fired. No drones can be fired. No soldiers can come in. The war is still happening. I'm sorry. The war is going to continue. It will continue from the north. It will continue from the west. It will continue from Iran. It will continue from Yemen. And not just the actual
I agree.
not just the actual fighting. Do you know what will happen if Israel comes out and says that Hamas is gone? Then the ICJ will say, "Oh, you guys really committed a genocide." That's what they're going to say.
Yeah.
So lose. And I've been saying this since the 8th.
I agree.
You know,
100%. I think you're exactly on point. I have another question for Yaacov. In this sort of wanting to broker peace with Israel, and I'm sure very many Gazans do you feel, Yaacov, that the actual locus of power, the people who are really in control of this war, are not sitting in Doha and Tehran, and therefore all your attempts can be undone by, as Barak says, just a stray missile or something happened? Because for them, sitting in Doha and Tehran, to sacrifice more Gazans as pawns and more Hezbollah for the cause, the greater cause, is nothing. How do you feel about how much power do Gazans have for themselves and how much of it is situated in Iran, Qatar, so on?
Look, I will quote some like military experts, yeah, like Brick and all those, that they say, guys, the war with Gaza, leave it, put it aside. The war is with Iran, and they have an analogy that is like a chess player. The chess game here
Mhm.
is Israel and Iran, but for Iran, when you play chess, you're willing to lose pawns. They will go. So for Iran, that's
Mhm.
he moves Hamas, he moves Hezbollah here. What they care, Lebanon is destroyed. What they care, Yemen is already destroyed. Why they care if it's more destroyed? I think you're right. So I don't think this is like the real war is. It will eventually be with Tehran. What we're experiencing now with Hamas, I must say that I think is just. I don't know if this expression exists. The tip of the iceberg.
Yes.
This is just the beginning of something bigger. I don't know if you guys are updated of what's the situation in northern Israel. Northern Israel is already in war. Is- We don't say it because Israel haven't entered fully with tanks. But once the war is over in Gaza, this I guess me and my friends we will have to go to the north, and it's crazier there because one rocket from Gaza, like it does destruction stuff,
Mhm.
but one rocket from Hezbollah, it can pull down a building. It's crazy stuff. It's another proportions.
So I just want to say here, in addition to the missile from Yemen, there was a barrage of rocket fire from Hezbollah in the north today, and since then, Israel has issued an evacuation notice to a town, an area in southern Lebanon. Obviously, we have to now up the ante. So, exactly what these gentlemen said on the 9th of September has come to pass. We now have a missile from Yemen, that is from the south, and we have an attack from the north. And obviously, the war is now moving to the north. And do they look like they want a war with Hezbollah or Hamas or anybody else? No, they don't. But Barak is absolutely correct. This war, it was never meant to be fought on the battlefield. This war was designed years in advance to be fought as a propaganda war. And exactly what Barak says over here, it is a lose-lose for Israel because no matter what they do, there is going to be a stray missile like Shifa. And I want to say I remember Shifa very well because Yair Levy actually posted a short clip on the day that the Gaza misfired the rocket into Shifa Hospital. And he said, guys, I want to warn you, there's going to be very bad news in a couple of minutes. You're going to see it start coming up. They're going to say that Israel attacked Shifa Hospital. That's not what happened. It was a rocket from Gaza. It fell short. They misfired, something like that. And as surely as what he said it, a few minutes later, the news reports came up, and he had already shown the footage that it could not have been from the IDF, and absolutely nobody cared. They went ahead. And the thing with propaganda was, and I know this because I've studied propaganda, is people always remember the first report. The retraction nobody cares about. Don't tell me the New York Times doesn't know this. Don't tell me the BBC doesn't know this. Don't tell me Sky News doesn't know this. They all know this. So somebody somewhere, and Barak mentioned, Red Cross and so on, they will always seek to undo any peace attempt. Anyway, let us go back to what they have to say.
So I think all this approach, all this drama we're doing with Gaza, I think this can be finished, but the real fear is somewhere else. But Besat Hashem, that he protects us.
Thank you for your very honest responses. And is there any response that, because I'd like to just give some feedback to these people, because they have quite a setup and they sort of, they have quite important people and so on.
Yes. Yes. Wait,
and
I want to interject here. I know, Aura, can I tell you exactly what you should tell them right now?
Yeah, please.
Tell them. And by the way, Yaacov, I know it's probably not as kosher for you, but I curse sometimes because that's just me. So if you hear me curse, it's totally fine on this platform. But Ora, you need to tell them. Please go tell Hamas.
Mhm.
Please go tell Hamas. And sorry for cutting you off, but it's so important at this point that
No, it's
people
fine, cool.
hear
Yeah,
this.
go ahead.
Tell your friends, since they are so interested in having a ceasefire, tell Hamas to hand over the fucking hostages, give us our people back, and this will be over, period. Tell them that. I don't know how else to say it, and I don't know what other language to say it in. Please hand over the hostages, put your guns down, and we can return to October 7th, 6:28 a.m.
100%. In fact, I will, with your permission, clip this segment off
Please.
and I will forward it to them.
Please do.
Very Jew. It's very Jewish. Jews, we like to blame ourselves of everything. If the temple was destroyed, was our fault. It's not the Romans. Was we hate each other. So it's the same thing. He said the hostages is our fault. So I think sometimes you also need to tell them, look, guys, the responsibility of Gaza is not our responsibility. By the way, in one of the interviews, I think was with Sky News, the speaker of Hamas, he said, the civilians in Gaza are not our responsibility. He's literally, and when you hear that, you say, man, so who's, if the government of Gaza, so exactly, that's what Barak said, is to the spot. Look, why you're pushing Israel to a ceasefire. Guys, Hamas stop shooting at me, I will stop shooting at them. It's that simple.
Ora, I want to say one other thing. Because I have you on the line and you've been on my platform for at least half a year now. You can clip this and you can go and show the same people this from my live streams in November and December up until September 11th. Please find the clips where I've said the following statement over and over. Hamas controls the most valuable commodity and asset to Israeli society, and it is the most important ingredient of this war, and that is hostages. It is the one thing that has dictated the past 11 months and how this war has been played out. If you zoom out and see all of the moves that have been made, it is because they have hostages still in captivity. And if on October 7th, and I promise you, if on October 7th, they did not successfully bring back hostages into Gaza, please someone enlighten me on how this war would be exactly the same. It would be a very different war. It would not be the same. We would not have to go into Gaza the way that we have had, going against people who are holding them as human shields, and find our people and bring them home. But
I agree with you. Can I ask you to directly address yet another naive belief? And
Please.
That belief is that if Israel puts down their guns and has a ceasefire, they absolutely believe the hostages will be returned. That is they literally believe the only way to get the hostages back is for Israel to put down their arms. Can you please address this naivete?
Yes.
Because I don't have the words and you are more experienced.
Yes. Look at them and say, I have a question for you. And they're going to say, what's your question? And then say, when did Israel enter Gaza after the 7th happened? And they're going to say, I have no fucking idea, because I promise you that they don't. And you're going to look at them and you're going to say, it took them 2 weeks. So please explain to me what was happening in those first 2 weeks. Do you know what was happening in those first 2 weeks? Hamas continued to fire rockets. People in the West Bank started to infiltrate into eastern Israel. People in the north, Hezbollah, started fighting from the northern border. The war with Hezbollah started on October 8th. So when our guns were down, because we didn't go into Gaza until, Yaacov, it took, a week and a half or 2 weeks until the first unit that went into Gaza?
Almost 3 weeks.
Okay, so for the first 3 weeks of the war, we didn't do shit. Our guns were down. Who was getting attacked? Us or them? We were getting attacked.
Exactly.
So if you want to debunk that, please show them what happened during the first 3 weeks of this war when our guns were down. And that should show them why we can't put them down ever again.
Yeah. And by the way,
No, I agree with you absolutely. I feel absolute despair that there are people who are still so passionately and avidly devoted to almost an egoistic version of what they believe the world should be. It's hard going dealing with them, but you know this. That's why I appreciate your insights.
Mm-hmm. Can I say one last thing? Because I'm on a roll right now, and I just feel because these are the people these are the people that of Lord have mercy. These are the ones that need to understand. Listen, did you say that they're in the Netherlands?
Mm-hmm.
Aura.
Yep.
Please look at them and say, listen, Kathy, you're 4,500 kilometers away from Tel Aviv. They are literally 4,500 kilometers away from Israel. For them, or people in New York who are 5,700 miles away from Israel, to expect the Middle East to run on Western morals, please tell them that they have no idea how the world works. This standard for Israel in the Middle East to operate the same that the US would handle an infantry or terrorist attack from Canada is just obscene. They have never been to the Middle East. They don't know what the Middle East is. They don't understand that there is a sliver of land the size of New Jersey that is surrounded by enemies who want to eat it up and destroy it and never see it again. Their expectation for them to handle this the way the Marines would handle it, or the way that the SWAT team would handle it, or the way that any other European military infrastructure would handle it, it's a different rule book. The Middle East is the jungle, and it is enough of people casting their own emotional judgment while they're so overly emotional and underly informed about how Israel should be handling their issue while they're saying it from 4,700 kilometers away. Tell them to go to Israel and then ask them what their opinion is. That's what I would say to them.
I just want to say the emotional element that Barak speaks to over here, this is classic propaganda. The way propaganda works is you bypass the brain and you go directly for the emotion. And so they never engage critical thinking. There's a lot of neuroscience involved. There's a lot of very sophisticated psyops involved. And so what Barak is saying over here is very important. And people have to try to steady themselves and stop with the emotional reaction and start thinking it through logically, logistically, realistically. How do you withdraw from people who are attacking you non-stop? The only way that Israel stopped Hamas from attacking, and there was this barrage of rocket fire that started and has never stopped until basically the IDF went in and dismantled their weapons and took out a lot of the terrorists. Until that happened, they were firing on Israel, and that did start immediately, and it carried on from the 8th of October. And what was Israel doing? Absolutely nothing. They were sitting there quietly. They had not retaliated, yet they were still under attack. So this is an extremely important point to notice, because at some point you have to take responsibility as an adult and as a human being, and you have to take responsibility for the content you consume and the way that you analyze it. And you have to be educated about propaganda, and you have to know that propaganda works on an emotional level. And this is a very sophisticated propaganda organization. There is a tremendous number of psyops. There is a great deal of analysis and thought that went into this war many years before October 7th happened. It was planned for. Everybody was put in motion. I can tell you now that there were pro-Palestinian marches. There was a huge one in New York City on the 8th of October. So don't tell me that wasn't coordinated. Don't tell me that there aren't a whole lot of people involved in this. And I personally think they are completely right. What the whole purpose of this wasn't about the war and Hamas. These are pawns. Iran will sacrifice them. They will sacrifice Hezbollah. The actual point of this is Iran is making a regional power play, which is absolutely astonishing because it's not even an Arab country. And this is on the Arab Peninsula, which is Arab territory, and really it should be between the Arab nations. But of course, Iran had to come in and try to destroy the Abraham Accords, because that would have put them in a very much on the back foot internationally. And this was definitely very well thought out and ingenious. Let's just continue with listening to what they have to say.
Yeah, even more. You said something very.
Many of them come from Israel. They are Jewish Israelis living in the Netherlands, and this is their view. And I was able to make absolutely no inroads. It was
Tell them to call me.
Oh no!
Tell them to call me.
If I was going to be speaking, then other people were going to pull out. So
Perfect.
I had to actually step away from the initiative, because they would not want to hear anything I was saying, and it was just very frustrating. And
Yaacov, what were you saying?
it's very
what you said is way more complex. Actually, in Gaza, I mean, not many people know this. Not many people know this, but in Gaza, there's not just Hamas. There's other groups. So it's even more complex. Not just Hamas kidnapped people. Civilians kidnap people. Civilians kidnap even. There was a case that they kidnapped a head. Not a person, just the head.
Yeah, I want you to understand that there were civilians, and there were civilians who kidnapped the head of somebody who they had murdered. They kidnapped the head and they held it hostage. They took bodies. They kidnapped dead bodies to hold hostage. They took live civilians across there and they held them hostage. And so what do you do with people like this? And then people say, oh, well, they're not all Hamas. Yes, but who took the hostages? There were many civilians who took them. And then exactly what Yaacov says over there, it's not just Hamas. There is Islamic Jihad. There are numerous groups over there. And then we have civilians who are holding hostages as well, which is why nobody can get a proper count. Nobody knows exactly who is doing what.
Members, some hostages that they were released, they like who is Louis Har and all them, they and Marmar, I don't remember his first name. They said that they were hostages in the home of what was an Al Jazeera member or something. It's crazy stuff, but that's the situation. Is way more complex. That Hamas puts down the guns. It doesn't work like that. It's way more difficult. And Barak, excuse me, I will leave now. So thank you for having me. Thanks to everyone here for your support and for taking part. And look, guys, everyone is here. I want to tell you something. You don't need this to defend Israel. You can, but there's another way to defend Israel. And honestly, we are winning. I see that we're winning in Gaza, but we're losing here in this square, in social media, in internet, in this public arena. We're losing, and we need really big fighters, soldiers. Barak is one example of someone that said, I'm taking this front, I'm fighting with all my strength. And guys, everyone here, you're part of this. You can share Barak's videos, you can share, I will say my videos, but are in Spanish, so for you can take part. So I'm really telling you guys, when you defend Israel in the public arena, you're defending us. As we are defending Israel, you also can take part. So please, guys, I really want to encourage you, and that's it. I'm just say you thanks and goodbye.
Te lo agradezco mucho. Muchas gracias, Yaacov. My Spanish is not very good anymore. What Yaacov has said over there now, that I don't think it's even a case of saying that you are fighting for Israel. I think it is a case of fighting for truth. I personally have been waging this war since before October 7th. I started gathering up anti-Semitic comments that were escalating at an incredible rate. I became so frantic that I kid you not, I actually gathered up a whole lot of screenshots and I had sort of categorized them and I sent them in desperation to Mossad. And I said, if you don't stop this talk, Jews are going to die. And I got back a question mark, question mark, question mark. And I know I'm not the only person who tried to warn that if this type of rhetoric was escalating, there was no way that the algorithms were missing it. There was no way that this was accidental. I personally would say that there were information operations running, very sophisticated information operations. I have written in my blog about how they were set up and so on. I'm not going to go into that now. My personal view is we are living in a time where it is a choice of your soul between truth and lies. And I very firmly stand on the side of truth. And that is why I have taken the position that I have, and I will do everything that I can. And I am certainly going to try to ramp it up and do a lot more. But to say that Israel is the aggressor, to say that a ceasefire is the solution, and then when you look at what happened today, this missile attack from Yemen and this massive attack from the Houthis in the north, Israel is fighting a seven-front war. I would not say a seven-front war. I would say they are fighting an eight-front war. And the main war that Iran wanted was this media war. And absolutely correct, they are trouncing Israel in it. And people are going to have to speak out much louder and much more firmly. I want to thank them again hugely. I've spoken to Barak a couple of times. I urge you to go and sign up for his channel. If you are Hispano Hablante, please go and sign up for Yaakov's channel and support them. And I'd really appreciate it if you enjoyed this to hit like, share, and subscribe. And if you'd like to buy me a coffee or support me on Patreon, I'd be very grateful. If you go back and you look at my work, you'll see that I have been writing extensively on the propaganda and what has been going on behind the scenes and my concerns that this is leading to a much bigger war than even the war in the north and the war with Yemen and the war coming from the side with Iraq and Iran. And that is actually World War III. And people have to start to take responsibility, because this is not something that cannot be stopped. This is something that people can pull themselves together and they can start to speak truth and they can start to speak up for the right thing. And if you do not, this is not going to be Israel's war. We are looking at global jihad. And in my investigations in the past, I abandoned my PhD in the law of war. But one of the things that I discussed, I always used to speak to soldiers, mercenaries, special forces, whoever would speak to me. And I'd always say to them, well, you know, what would happen in a World War III scenario? And one of the pathways to World War III is global jihad. And my goodness me, you want to look at what is happening in Africa. There has been an explosion of jihadist violence. You want to look at what is happening in Israel. And all of these people who support Hamas and who stand at the Western universities and they wave their flags and they so on, and they do all these things. What they do not understand is they are inflaming jihad. And jihad is something that once it starts, it doesn't stop. So please, for the sake of humanity, for the sake of everyone on this planet, rethink your approach to Israel. If you are one of these people who think that Israel is the aggressor, here you are. Yaacov, does he look like somebody who wants to go out and kill innocent Gazans for no good reason? No, he doesn't. Barak has bent over backwards to try to facilitate peace negotiations with Gaza. Gaza itself, well, what can they do? They are being manipulated as puppets and they are being sacrificed as pawns for a greater power. So I'm going to leave it over there. Take care of yourselves and each other, and I will get back to you soon. That's it for now.